Games Without Games by Nick. So we're trying to teach kids how to do things with some fun and some games, but sometimes you can't go get one, and you don't have one, or you didn't plan it, and you want to make it fun. So that's what he's going to do up front. And then in the back of the gym, Taylor is going to do back handsprings, which is the thing everybody wants to learn. And we have had broken arms and back handsprings, so it's a really important thing to know how to set up your surfaces and your stations so that we don't have that really traumatic arm injury or, on their head where they're terrified of the skill. So those two are really important, so we're going to start those off here. All right, so you guys are welcome to split. You could go between both. You could stay at one that you need more or want to know about more. And then they're both on YouTube Live, so you can watch them later if you're at one and not the other. Okay? So let's split where you'd like to go, and then we'll hand off the mics to Taylor and Nick.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll adjust it if needed.
Taylor, check out all.
No, let Nick have it. And then whatever he doesn't need, I'm going to use.
The one and only Taylor Sturgis, Virtual Land.
Everybody get ready for the best presentation in the world. By the best person in the world.
Hi guys, can you hear me? Does that sound okay?
Oh, Nick's is way better.
What about now? Oh, is that better? Not better.
Taylor, you sound great.
Do I actually? Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, we're gonna start real simple and then build our way up. But basically, we're doing all back handspring readiness to tell if someone's ready to back handspring and where to allow them to try it safely. I think over my 10 years, I've really mastered down like 3 really good setups that I will use for any class, for any back handsprings flip-flop shop. So we're gonna go over that. If you don't know me, my name is Taylor. I've been coaching here for a little over 10 years. I do mostly the Excel program, but I do think one of my expertises is coming up with stations. I love building mats and putting stations together, and kind of using the mats to manipulate kids to do what you want. So, are they really actually ready to back handspring? First things you want to go over when you're doing this is basic motions and shapes. There's nothing that gets me more than at flip-flop shop. Your like average pink comes in is like, I'm gonna get a back handspring, and they want you to spot you and you say arms up, swing your arms, and they have no idea what an arm swing is, or like the little basics. So there's about 4 things that I think they need to know before you even consider back handspring drills or anything like that. Sure, you ready? Okay, first up, they should know like a good arms by their ears. Arms up. Trying to go over, we call these shoulder holes right here. Closing their shoulder holes and opening their shoulder holes. So relax. And up. Got it? Simple, but if they don't have a basic understanding of up, down.
Can you do that one more time? One more
not
time.
going to hold their body weight. So relax, show your shoulder holes, and cover your shoulder holes. Got it? It's a little different than arms by your ears, because you have that one kid that you say arms by your ears, and they do their hands by their ears. Or it's like kind of by their ears. So going over the little things like that. Number 1. Since I've been doing, like when I did flip-flop shop when I was here, we've been saying the same, like swing, bend, extend. And I've actually argued with my sister who also coaches if that order is good. So you guys should actually think about it, see what helps and what you think is better. We have always done kind of swing, bend, then jump and extend. And then for a little while I did bend first, then swing, extend. Does anyone have an opinion on this matter? Ideally, yes, same time, but we're talking about your average everyday kid that knows absolutely nothing, and you need to break it down.
I think swinging helps with the momentum. So that if you swing first, that really helps you jump. And
Yes. I feel like I could argue both ways. That's my problem, is I could fight either way. If you're doing swing first, you are getting the arm motion and the momentum. But if they swing first, they're most likely going to drop their chest, right? So then when they sit down, they're not sitting in a chair. They're folding forward. Then it's twice as hard to back handspring, right? Because they're doing chest up, then chest back, and they're doing double the work, right? You see what I'm saying? So there's like a little in between. So you kind of have to decide. Like sometimes it depends on the child. For me, I'm generally swing first, bend with their chest up, then extend. But we'll go over that about a million times. Is the swing, that extend with every single child. That's most important. So we go over that. Next up, they need to know an arm throwing position. Like they need to know that they're literally like tossing something backwards, right? So arms up, swing, bend, throw the arms. So she has a good example of like lifting her hips when she does it and kind of arching. And I'm gonna go over drills for each one of these. The next thing that they need to know how to do is a bridge without their head on the floor. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, but if they cannot get their head off the floor in a bridge, they can't back handspring, which is surprising to some kids. But if you actually talk to the kids like they're little adults, you say, I know you really want to try this, but does it make sense if you can't get your arms straight, you can't hold your head up, can you hold yourself up? You know what I mean? You just have to talk them through it. The more you break it down for them and like let them understand what their body is doing, way easier. And then the last thing, other than a bridge or an arch shape, I'll go over like a rainbow shape. The last thing is they should know how to snap down. Can you do a snap down? So Charlotte's here can do a good snap down. Not all of them are gonna look like that. Even if someone does, can you do a bad one? Like handstand, fall down to 2 feet. They need to know how to come down to 2 feet from their hands. So even if it's not spectacular, no problem. They do need to know how to get off their hands and land somewhat safely. So those are my 5 or 4 basics that they need to know and really consider. So same thing, like flip-flop shops, I will start the whole thing just going over those things. Does that kind of make sense? All right, I'm gonna go over some basic stations just for those things to make sure that they're ready for what they're doing. And then I'll show you where the best places to start and spot them on are gonna be. All right, the first thing for the arm swing and bend, we're gonna make our way over here to the panda. She's going to start with her arms by her ears with the medicine ball. She's going to do a little swing, keep her chest up, jump, and she's not going to let go of the ball, but she's going to jump and hold onto it and try to land up as far back as she can. And good go. To be fair, this is why I've always done this by a wall, because you're always going to have that one kid that lets go. Try another one. And big jump, throw it back. And that's hard for her. That's like, I think that's an 8-pound ball. So it's compared to her body weight, that's really hard. But she's also getting the motion of why she swings her arm back, right? Because as it's weighted, she can feel that her arms are pulling her back, right? And that gives her the motion of why she needs to do it. Yeah, you can jump back farther to an arch. And big jump. And that's why you go on a squishy mat by a wall. Alright, moving on. All of the bridging stations, these are super, super important. You know, I mean, we have some in our class, upper level, Excel 5-6, Platinum Diamonds that cannot do a bridge with their head off the floor, therefore cannot back handspring. And that's fine, it's not going to be meant for everyone. But there are kind of ways to go around it. But some basic bridge things that I think they all need to go over before they start is shoulder rocks in a bridge. You guys want up on here? Show some shoulder rocks.
Did someone be a bad
So this is like, oh no, I don't really know how to bridge, right? But at least she's trying to get the open the armpits, close the armpits. Where Antoinette over here has a good bridge, right? She is starting on her arms and still working on opening up. Especially in this, I'll try to go over with them. If they're not looking at their hands, when they try to jump to their hands, they are going to crumble, right? It's like a handstand. You do a handstand kind of looking at your belly button. And I'll tell that to them. I'll say, can you try to do a bridge or a handstand like looking down at your belly button? It doesn't work, right? So explaining that to them is very helpful. But bridge shoulder rocks. I'll also do some bouncy limbers, and even Charlotte had a hard time with this one this morning. It's a hard station, so don't think like if they can't make this, they can't. Back handspring, but this is a good thing when you're trying to coach and you need side stations. You can't just spot every single back handspring. This is good for, I think, whole body strength for back handsprings. Alright, first one, she's gonna do handstand, bridge, and try to bounce back over. That's really hard. So that's why I covered the metal, because always plan for the kid that's gonna do something wrong, and then if they do great, spectacular, right? But always plan for the absolute worst. So over here I had her alternate handstand, bridge bounce, back over, which is hard, bridge down, stand up. That kind of block, that's really hard. Antonia, you want to try it? That's okay. Even if they handstand fall to a bridge, it's going to kind of bounce them to where if they are not strong in the shoulders, they're going to kind of collapse here. And you'd much rather do it in a safe space here than them go over and chuck a back handspring and then have that crumble on their own. So just little stations like that. More bridging, we have, well, one, you can never do enough bridging down a wall. You know what I mean? Bridge back, touch the wall, push off. Our next progressions for that, for bridging and blocking. Was this too big for you? This one, I'm trying to go over back handsprings all without using an octagon, how you would typically just have them back handspring over an octagon. That is one of the most dangerous things. I know it's really helpful, and it can be really helpful. Every Excel 2 that's come through and got back handsprings, I've never used an octagon just because I can't. If I'm going to do that, I feel like I have to stay and spot it because that's way more dangerous, right? So they are helpful, and when you can use them and you have it sized appropriately, it is great. But they're not always, that's not the only drill to do a back handspring. So this, I'll have them start laying down, make sure it's small, and they lay down, no jumping. They push back, and they try to push strong off the wall. Yep, exactly. Shoulders shrunk. And you're going to have the kid that bends all the way in and bends all the way out. They're not going to always do it perfectly, but they're at least building the strength to get towards a back handspring. This was just a fun little setup that basically if they're a beginner, they're going to put their arms up here and their shoulders are going to be closed. Can you show that? Up at the top, number 1. Right, you're going to have this kid. If you put something for them to look at on the wall, it's much more enticing for them to do it the correct way, right? So if you say, you know what, this is level 1, level 2 is to try to get your hands down here, and level 3 is actually open armpits where they actually have to, sorry. They actually have to like push off and get back over. That's really good for getting off their hands, plus it gives them a visual challenge. You know that they're gonna work on this station because there's a goal. Sometimes stations work, you guys know this, and sometimes if you ask them to do this station for 3 minutes, they are 100% gonna do 2 and then sit down or jump on it the whole time. So anytime you can add those things in. But shoulder blocking, super, super important. The last thing I go over before we really get into the nitty gritty is like body weight and handstand stations. Can they hold themselves up? If they can't handstand without crumbling, chances are good they're gonna do a really poor back handspring. So this with the canyon blocks is my go-to for everything. She's gonna side handstand in, and she's gonna flip between hollow and arch, which is really hard. And I try to tell them, some of them should be shoulders against, shoulder blades, and then armpits against. So you can make this as easy or as hard as you'd like, right? Like if you have a very, very beginner, it's gonna be really hard for them to go back and forth, over and back. That is really good. Can you do a little worse? You just kind of flail yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, Is this ideal? Absolutely not. Are they getting the strength of going over their shoulders, going back and forth? Yes. So this is something that they can do to work towards, make sure that they can hold their body weight. With that, all the handstand snap downs. I don't think snap downs are done enough. You can do a million snap downs and it's never going to be perfect. So any type of snap down station, I'm going to go over a couple little back handspring stations for round off back handsprings. And then I'll show you my spawning spots. We're going to go to this front corner up here.
Looks like this. They roll the dice. We got 5. All right, I'll go on this one with each station 5 times. Okay, go over the circuit 5 times. So roll the dice. It's going to go around.
All right, so over here, we're starting to put things together. We're starting to, they know the shapes, they know how to do everything separately. We're starting to add it all together.
Just keep an eye.
At least for me, and I think this should for gym ride, when you call it like this shape, like extended hollow is a zombie. Like if I asked any of my kids to show you a zombie shape, they would know. Either people are standing, a better rock, it's any of the, zombie is.
What I'll do.
Yes, so over here, we're working on the arm curl and the head lift, so she's gonna, she's gonna do a butt bounce in a zombie, so a seat drop and then, okay. Got it? It's the down, look at in the opposite. I know some kids, it's really hard to explain. I know I said to try to break it down like the first events. But I would ever know physics like this. Of like, if you're trying to swing their arms back, if they're already back and they go back farther, it's probably not. So, I know it sounds hard, but it's like, okay, let's do the physics of back handsprings for kids. It's not that unreasonable. If you explain to them why they do something, they're more inclined to actually do it. So easiest would be just butt bounce, go back. Once they get closer to the front of that hamstrings, go to the handstand, slow snap down, butt bounce, go back.
Hold on the circuit, pick a dice to roll. And then try to get to 13.
Yes. So you can build this up as much as you want. So I always, when I'm setting up the back handsprings, I would use multi-level stations, like a beginner could do this, but also she could work on this, and she's done this for her kingdoms before. So it's all you goes away, you can just go and do intensity to each station, but I've done this a lot recently, and I think it's been
That was a little tricky.
very, very helpful.
I usually say is like try
If I'm going to do a first-time spot for back handspring, so I want to show you that they can do all of those stations. They can hold themselves up, and I keep themselves ready, which can be hard to say, you know what, I do think you're ready, and ooh, you know what, I think we should do a couple more drills. If you're on the edge, have them do more drills. Always go back. Don't push them too far. We'll have the one kid that tries it, does have a scary fall, and never wants to work on it again. You know what I mean? So if you're on the edge, always go backwards. You should feel confident in them trying it to let them try it. You know what I mean? You know where you have that kid that's like, can I try it? Can I do it by myself? And you're like, I think actually you should. Tell them, explain to them why you don't think they should. Oh, you know what? When you think you're branching out, you open your armpits. I think you should go back and try these 3 stations. Once you master that, you can then try it. It's reasonable to actually reason with kids. But my go-to station, this is kind of a version of it, is a giant, anything super, super, super angled and squishy. Those are your first goals. Okay? So, this is just a funny story. I went to set this up for my class one day. Brand new kids had just moved up, so I said, we're going to do the giant station. And a kid asked me if I was building a dollar store cheese mat. So somehow in our gym, this is called the dollar store station. I think it's like Gucci, but it's fine. Super angled, always have something at the end. It needs to be really squishy, so that I'll even set this up into the pit so that they can fly and they will be totally fine no matter where they land. The more angled, the easier it's going to be, of course, right? The less they have to do the work, the safer they're going to be until they figure out what they're doing. So no matter who it is or what they're doing, that was really good. I start them on this setup, right? And then if they're doing good and I'm doing multi-level, I'll do a second quarter pit. They can easily do multiple back handsprings here, right? I'll add a block in front of it. Handstand, stop, back handspring, right? Like this can be used for any level. I even sometimes have my 5-6 or platinum diamonds do this as a station for back handspring tried through with, or back handspring back tuck up and off, right? So it's not like it's a beginner station that if you set it up, you're gonna waste a lot of space in the mats. Anyone really can use this, but this is by far like my favorite place to start. It's easy to spot. They're gonna get back fast. Do you have any questions about the super angled or why we do that, or are we good? Good? Alright. The next best place, obviously you're not going to always be able to set something ginormous like this up, and this next one is also going to be kind of similar, but you can shrink it down very easily. I'm going to move right over next to it. After super angled, or sometimes I'll combine the two of them, it's going from something bouncy. Not completely on something bouncy, but from something bouncy. Because generally what's the hardest part is getting them to jump and reach back. So if they're jumping from something that's helping them get the bounce, so much easier to spot them. Yep, so this, if you're from our gym, the sizing of these two together is perfect to spot because you can stand up. Like this is the easiest thing for me. Obviously this is not always going to be set up. You're never going to get to do just this. But I've done this where I'll put this on the floor to a regular cheese mat. You can do an arrow board with a pit pillow behind it, and it all does the exact same thing. And you can also upgrade this to whatever they're working on. Does that kind of make sense? So bouncy is always my step 2. And then from there, you can combine them really in any combination. You can do, a cheese mat on the fast track. It's a good setup. I don't like spotting there. The timing can feel weird, especially if they're double jumping or whatnot. So I am actually not a fan of going on something bouncy to something bouncy. I prefer them go off the bouncy so they learn how to actually hold themselves up. But that could just be like my personal preference. But from here, they're making it. They're doing a great job. We're going flat porta pit next, or barely angled porta pit. The one day we started with this, it was ridiculously angled. To where I had I think it was a couple like mini jets, like super, super small 5-6-year-olds. They were able to do back handsprings by themselves on their first go around of learning it because it was so angled and so safe that they all were able to try it, right? And they were totally fine. Even if one has a crumbly arm and they go down to their head, they're on a porta pit, they're in the safest place. It's squishy, they can fall over, and it's totally fine, right? Same idea when I'm starting rough back handsprings. I think that's a lot harder to gauge if you can spot that or not, because that's a lot more intimidating. You don't know if the kid's going to run past you and tumble behind you. You're going to miss them. They go crooked, anything like that. So I do have a couple of go-to round off back handspring stations to spot. Sorry, I did not plan these in order. Obviously, we're going back over there. All right, over here, this is our signature. Oh, Jesus. Our signature, I call it round up back something, and if I tell any group that I teach to set up round up back something, they do exactly what I want. But you have to have obstacles. If you're going to spot someone on a round back insert first time and you just have them tumbling on an open panel, I think that's super irresponsible, actually, because you're not setting them up for success. You're not setting yourself up for success. That was not correct. That was not it. So make sure that you have mats to make them do what you want. You're the expert. You know what you want them to do. Mats are going to help you do that. Yes. So I'll start them standing. And they have to show me 3 times in a row before they get to progress. Because if they cannot do it consistently 3 times, I can't trust myself to catch them if they're going to do the station wrong. So at least 3 times in a row correctly before they can go ahead and move on to the next step. But I'll have them start, work the foot on, hands at the end. Something to round up over is super important. Because if they're not stretching out the round up or they're going to go crooked, it's not going to go well. So hands right here, they round up over and we'll just rebound first. Good foot on top. Right? Go ahead. And we'll start standing. If they can show me that 3 times, I'm always starting with a standing round up back handspring. That's always my go-to. We're not going to ever just chuck it running first. It's standing round up back handspring. Because generally they've worked on standing back handsprings, and then they're going to get scared when you tell them to run and go for it with all of their power. That's terrifying. I would have been scared to do that. So breaking it down a little farther. So once they can show me that they can round off appropriately in this spot, they're next going to do round off. They're going to purposely stop in the zombie, right? Round off, touch the mailbox, and then stop there. Can you do that?
You don't have to work game.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly it. Good. And they're not always going to do this in the right shape, but I guarantee you'll be able to spot them if they stop and touch the mailbox. It's so much easier. So from here, they can show me this 3 times. We're going to add a standing back handspring that goes from a zombie shape. So I'll have them stand there. They're going to hold their hands on, sit back, bend, jump. First way I'm always going to teach it. It has to be no swing from a zombie. Very good. Then, once we got that down, they've done that 3 times in a row. Of course, usually I'll do more, but at least 3 times to move on. We're going to do round off, tap, go. Round off, tap, go. They still have that moment of pause to think about, oh, this is my arm swing getting back. They're actually doing better shaping for when they're going, of course, your chain goes and stuff like that. It's more reasonable for me to spot. If they don't tap that, they're not going to back handspring. They should know that. You need to set your expectations for them because this is dangerous for both of you. And that's why I have each mat as its own thing. If their feet are not landing here, we're not ready to do it. You have to have something squishy. I know a lot of people will do just handle mat to a squishy mat. It's hard to punch off with something squishy. Realistically, you need to give something that you think they can actually bounce off of. And then from there, we'll start connecting round up back handsprings. And I've done the same station when they're first learning round up back tucks. Same idea. You need to have something to visualize where they're going to do each thing. And then once they add it on, I'll generally start with like a power hurdle. That's really hard for a lot of kids, even upper level, to ask them to do like jump, bad foot, good foot, even if it's miniature. I don't know why that's super hard. Yeah, so sometimes I'll have them start on a mat, jump, start on top of it. Well, that was good too. That's harder. Starting on top is a little bit easier. They can jump over. There we go. Yes. And then once they're getting used to that, always give them a hurdle spot. Generally, if your kid's doing a round off in the wrong spot from where you want them to be spotted, it's the hurdle. It's generally not the round off. It's the hurdle. They don't know where to start and end each thing. Visualization's most important. This is for when I'm going to spot. If they're doing this somewhat reasonably, there's a over by the pit, I got another station. This is most reasonable. I'll have everyone do their first round of back handstrings by themselves here. And it's going to seem super ridiculous, but I don't think it can be safer than here. We're going to do the same idea as what we did over there. Standing, round off. They're going to keep their hands on the red, then back handspring.
Victoria, can you choose that? Can you put the platform up?
Yes. So I purposely have that under the top position mat and no mat at the bottom so it flops so that if they do give out and they have double arms, they're totally fine. It's not super weird and they collapse right there. It's so able that they're still going to get put over and be totally fine in the pin. So I always first try to have them go here. And you can even spot right here. If I'm doing a super beginner or I'm doing a flip long shot and everyone wants to try at least one back handspring, you know what I mean? I try to get everyone to try it. Save this easiest place to try it. If I can have someone do that giant hit through, I'll totally go on a back handspring here. And I am so confident letting them just try it. Obviously, I'm going to watch them and make sure they're safe. But I am most confident letting anyone try it here first. Does that make sense? You have you have max to do the zombie, then go back. So this is why I was saying this is once they're figuring it out, once they're figuring it out. You'll have your kids that you can spot them less and they're good to go, and I'm going to figure it out. You have that kid that has to start on their own. The first one, those kids that are like, I know I can do it, I'm not on my own. But probably not. It was the same, you're like, oh, I hope I know you're on your own, and you're going to do
We'll start flattening out. I'll have them learn from the end of the air track to a quarter bit. Or I've done the same thing. Like medium box to a quarter pit. It's all the same idea of giving them a little bit of jump from the round off and then something really squishy, really safe for them. That you're basically planning for a crash and a fall, right? You can do everything that you think you can to prevent a crash or a fall, but you know inevitably it's going to happen. You're always going to have that one kid. Prepare for that kid, and then know how to each station from there. Does that kind of make sense? Does anyone have any questions on stations, where to spot, how to spot, anything that I can go over for that? Okay, then before you leave, one, if you're able to go listen to Nick's Games with No Games, I would strongly recommend it. If not, I would love to stay and chat, and I want to hear some of your guys' ideas. Obviously, I'm not a perfect expert. No one is. The more we communicate with how we do things and why we do things, we can better the sport and help everyone figure out backhand springs. You know what I mean? Does anyone have anything to add? Questions? If not, I'll kind of let you go. But anything? Yes, Anna?